Welcome to another podcast episode. In this episode, we're going to be talking about what is BigCommerce, talk about a little bit about who it's going to be best for, and some of our thoughts about the solution in general. I've got Michael, one of our BigCommerce executives, on the call, as well as myself, who does more general e-commerce and also work in the NetSuite ecosystem a lot. So that's kind of our plan to cover that particular topic today. And to start off with, I put a post on LinkedIn just probably a couple weeks ago, and I was just looking through the comments because it was pretty funny. So one of the things, just to warm up today, is I posted some things around just common mispronunciations in any ecosystem. There's going to be people who are just slip-ups of words, and here's what I said on the post, and if you're not following me, follow me on LinkedIn. But I said, what are the common mispronunciations for prospects/clients to say in your industry? Here are a couple of common ones for me. Netflix does not equal NetSuite. Spotify does not equal Shopify. And I was just chuckling through some of these comments here. And Danny says, I saw Netflix slip up through someone's contract, which I thought was really funny. I've definitely
within a contract?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yikes. I guess you have to resend that one.
Yeah. New DocuSign for that one, right?
That's here's another comment. She says, in quotes, "This contract does not carry any warranties for the Netflix platform."
That's funny.
That's pretty funny. Liam, he's part of StrongPoint. They have a change management solution. He says their free flashlight tool gets called Flashpoint. I don't know if you saw this old Fox show called Flashpoint.
Oh, yeah. I used to love that show back in the day. Oh,
Kinda
yeah.
funny. Vince, he's a pretty fun guy in the e-commerce space. We've known each other for a bit, but he says Magneto is not equal to Magento. Got to get some Marvel in there. Stephanie says big e-commerce instead of big commerce.
Yeah.
I still don't know the different ways to spell e-commerce with a capital C or a dash in between. Let's see a couple other funny ones. Oh, Jake, an account manager at NetSuite, he and I have known each other a bit too. He says, I get called Jeff at least 2 times a week. And I replied, thanks for the comment, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right, that's about it. There's some other funny ones in there,
That's funny.
but I figured some comment section today.
Yeah. There you go. Always good.
So let's move on to kind of our topic today about what is BigCommerce. And if you wouldn't mind, Michael, I'm going to just ask a series of questions. Some of them I already know the answers to, but just to help educate people, think higher level. And then there's questions I don't know that we'll just talk through them and talk out loud today. So the first question I have is, what is BigCommerce? Can you give just a general overview about what it is?
Yeah. BigCommerce is an e-commerce hosting platform that essentially a merchant's going to pay for a subscription to gain access to that platform. And once you gain access, you're able to log on to your account and set up an e-commerce website. Now, BigCommerce is set up in such a way that you can manage the entirety of your e-commerce website through that platform. Otherwise, you can leverage external software to help you manage it. I know we work a lot in the NetSuite space. That's an example of where NetSuite and BigCommerce cross paths. You can use integrations, and BigCommerce is known well in that space because they have open APIs. And so developers, can connect to the BigCommerce APIs and integrate it into other software systems. So that's really how BigCommerce works. But, if you're a merchant, you can really, if you wanted to, you could really do everything within the BigCommerce ecosystem from managing and from the perspective of managing an e-commerce website.
What are other, just to get people a little bit of the lay of the land, maybe they've heard other types of e-commerce solutions out there. What are a handful of other e-commerce solutions that people may have heard about besides BigCommerce? Some
of the most common e-commerce solutions, I'll mention 2 of them, would be things like Shopify or WooCommerce, which is the WordPress version of e-commerce, right? It's called WooCommerce. Now, those are 2 kind of main players within the e-commerce space. And if you've ever been on really either of those 2 platforms, WordPress, WooCommerce, or Shopify, BigCommerce from a look and feel perspective, from a management perspective, is pretty similar, where you have a login, you get into a portal, and then from there, you're able to manage everything in your e-commerce system. Now, of course, each of those three, right, there are similarities and differences between all of those. And so, of course, there are going to be differences that we can talk about today, but those are going to be some of the other names that folks might have heard of, right? If you're listening to this podcast right now, maybe you've probably heard of Shopify before, right? Or WordPress. And so those are some of the other main players in that arena.
Okay. So they've got those same types of drag and drop tools, maybe app marketplaces.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, what you're mentioning, so there's kind of a couple different areas we can think about when managing a website. You can think about the back end, the operational side of things, and you can think about the front end. So what you just mentioned, the drag and drop tools, right? You're referencing to the front end, the theme development. Now, this is where WordPress is really well known, kind of in the entire website ecosystem. WordPress websites are very popular. You don't only need to have WordPress if you're going to do e-commerce. A lot of blogs and stuff, and my wife likes to cook, right? So a lot of the websites we go on to look for recipes and stuff, they're WordPress based sites where they don't have an e-commerce, cart checkout feature on them. So
WordPress. Yeah, WordPress is just like
known
landing page, and then WordPress owns WooCommerce as well, but it's technically a separate application.
Yeah, that's right. It's an extension of a WordPress website, basically, right? It's another dimension you can add onto your WordPress site in order to get that those e-commerce features.
On the Shopify side, then I see a lot of like small apparel brands, maybe somebody who has like a side hustle wanting to do a dropship business. I see it more utilized there, and I'm sure it can do things at scale. But I've also seen a lot of people move from Shopify to BigCommerce, and I suspect that it happens due to maybe a certain size or fees of Shopify, although have like a really low barrier of entry.
Yeah.
Maybe at scale, when the business scales get kind of expensive. Could you talk me through the difference in the way those agreements are structured for Shopify versus BigCommerce? Like, what are the contractual differences on why it might start making more sense to switch over to a different model like BigCommerce has?
Yeah. So first off, I'm glad you bring up Shopify, because Shopify is very popular, and for good reason. Shopify is a pretty good platform if you're looking for a specific solution, right? Shopify is really strong for small merchants or merchants that are getting started, as you mentioned, people who are running a side hustle, or maybe mom and pop shops that have run a corner store for a while and now they want to explore e-commerce. Shopify is going to be a great solution for that. The cool thing about Shopify is that within their app ecosystem, you have a ton of different options to choose from. But when you have so many options, all of them aren't going to be the best quality. And so that's one thing that we run into in the Shopify ecosystem. But I guess to answer your question, right? Merchants who are on Shopify might want to consider changing to BigCommerce eventually once they start making around $5 million. And the reason
in annual
being,
revenue or e-commerce revenue?
in e-commerce revenue. The reason being, Shopify and BigCommerce, you both pay a monthly subscription to have access to their platforms. Now, with Shopify, they also act as a payment processor. And so when you sign up for a Shopify account, you have a rate that you're going to be paying on each transaction that goes through that website. With BigCommerce, they are truly just an e-commerce hosting platform. They do not have their own payment like processor software, so you can really leverage whatever other software you want. For example, BigCommerce is really close with PayPal Braintree. So when you log on to a BigCommerce account, that's the primary one that's suggested for you. And Shopify just works a little bit different. So it makes sense to change from Shopify to BigCommerce once the fees that you're paying on your Shopify transactions outweigh the fees that you would be paying on your transactions on BigCommerce if you could go with a better payment provider. I mean, that could mean a lot of different things for merchants. Like we'd really need to, chat with somebody to figure out when the right change is, when it would be the right change or the right time for a change rather. And we see that happen about around the $5 million mark when somebody's doing around $5 million worth of business in online revenue, what they do through their e-commerce site. That's generally when we see that
Okay, so that is,
worthwhile.
you just described when to switch from Shopify to BigCommerce, or at least look at it as an alternative option
Yeah.
because of fees. But it also occurs to me that it would probably be okay to even just start with BigCommerce when you're doing a lot less, and then that could be an option too. And I know that there's a lot of benefits that it's with Shopify. It's very easy to turn on a store. I would argue that it's pretty easy with BigCommerce too. And and I understand why somebody that is just doing it as their side hustle totally makes sense to do Shopify. And I can actually see it being useful even at scale too, and even when the fees get high enough that it's harder to swallow, but it's definitely a hard business decision. I've seen people spend $500,000 a year on Shopify transaction fees, and once they're doing quite a bit of revenue. So there is a tipping point that it looks like. But if I were to just start with BigCommerce, is there a path to start with it prior to even having $5 million in e-commerce revenue?
Yeah, there definitely is. And BigCommerce and Shopify are similar in the ways that you set them up. Like honestly, log onto their websites. Within a couple clicks of a button, you can be signed up and have access to your administrator hub, where you can then activate everything you need to on your e-commerce site. So it's really simple there. The reason Shopify, just their marketing team markets a lot to the mass public, right? You might be watching a YouTube video or honestly listening to a podcast, and there might be Shopify advertisements on there. Whereas BigCommerce is known as like a mid-market e-commerce platform, and so their marketing dollars are spent in a different way, and we can just see that as people who are in the e-commerce industry. That's something you can notice. But even if you want to start a website from scratch, maybe you are that mom and pop shop that's been on the corner for a while and now you want to expand into e-commerce to offer your products nationwide, you can still do that on BigCommerce. And I would suggest that if you know you're going to ramp up quickly, right? If you know within the first year, like you're going to be gaining quite a bit of traction on e-commerce, then let's only set up a website one time instead of gaining traction and needing to migrate platforms once, maybe if you went on a smaller one. So, I would suggest going with BigCommerce if you think you're going to gain traction pretty quickly within e-commerce. And let me add a little bit of context, Caleb, to why BigCommerce is seen as a mid-market and kind of for more established e-commerce websites. And that's just because of the tool set that's on there. Earlier I mentioned, if you don't know much about e-commerce, one thing that you do need to know is you pay for a subscription on BigCommerce, but then you're going to need to buy apps to add out the feature set of your website to make sure you have the features needed to best serve your customers. Caleb, what's a feature that you've used on a website recently that's helped you make a purchase? Dude, those things are controversial, right? Have you ever noticed a lot of times if you like reload the page or go incognito and look at it again, you get the same promo?
Yeah, every single time.
So funny.
It's just a pop-up.
hey, but it works for some companies, right? So that's an example of an app that you would have to, software you'd have to download onto your website to add that feature. So on BigCommerce, the apps that they're offering you, right, the apps that they have within their ecosystem are going to be more robust and geared towards companies that have websites and need some features. Caleb, I know you've worked a lot within e-commerce. So when you've worked with apps or that sort of thing, what kind of apps have you seen merchants need in order to be successful once they really start to gain traction in e-commerce?
Yeah, there's two sides of it. There's the B2C side, that whole direct-to-consumer, as well as the B2B.
Good point.
On the direct-to-consumer side, they're going to be more geared towards marketing types of apps. So integrations to email marketing would be one, tax solutions to be able to quickly integrate there. And then on the business-to-business side, There's going to be a lot more of pay invoice portals, a lot more sales rep interaction where the sales rep is masquerading on behalf. Those would probably be a couple of those main ones. Also, just changing pricing and customer-specific pricing on the B2B side.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another one I've seen is, product configuration tools. That's one that we see come up, especially in the promotional product space, right? You want to be able to put your logo or put some words on, apparel you're buying or, some swag you're buying for an upcoming trade show or something like that. Those are also apps that, I guess I've seen added onto websites to build out that functionality.
Like a build your own kit, like
Yeah.
add-on options, adding a warranty, stuff like that.
Yeah. And so BigCommerce works in that mid-market tier, right, for established companies because those apps you're going to get to build out that functionality we just spoke about, those apps are more robust. The companies that create them are companies, and sometimes when you get into other platforms, some of these plugins or apps you're adding to your store are not created and maintained by such established companies. Sometimes it might be a team of, 1, 2, maybe 3 people. And so let's see here, the support you might need for your app isn't going to be as good if it's a team of 1 or 2 people managing that app versus
it's a side hustle versus a company.
Yeah. And so that's why BigCommerce is known kind of for some of those established businesses. But once again, if you're starting a business and you want to gain real traction, not a bad idea to start with them in the first place, right? Because once you grow, you'll be on solid ground.
Well, let's talk about, so we talked a little bit about, people who have a side hustle, which obviously it seems like Shopify is a really good spot for that type of thing. And it really gears towards that. But there's also going to be companies that are trying to evolve. Let's say you're a wholesale distributor, a light manufacturer, where maybe you already have 10, 20, 50, 100 million annual revenue, but you have zero e-commerce. You're taking everything by the phone, but you're trying to evolve. You've maybe lost some accounts because your competitors have e-commerce and you don't. So there's technically zero e-commerce revenue, but good overall company revenue. In that case, does Shopify make the most sense? Does BigCommerce make the most sense? Maybe explain your thoughts.
Yeah. In that case, if I were, based on what you said, right, that high level kind of discovery of what a company is, the first platform that comes to mind would be BigCommerce. Because right now, right as of this recording, BigCommerce is pushing hard into the B2B space with the features that they are offering those sorts of companies. For example, BigCommerce has an app that you can download onto your store called BigCommerce B2B Edition. And what that is, it's an app specifically for B2B companies, the ones like you've described. And what it does is it makes the path to purchase for those customers on those B2B websites, it makes the path of purchase easier, not only for the first purchase, but also for the following purchases. And we know the best customers to have if you're running an e-commerce website are the ones that buy from you a second time, a third time, a fourth time, right? And so what that B2B edition does is it basically builds out a portal that those B2B companies can log into, and then they can have that really customized to their needs with their information, right? Especially as think about something like, even like, tax status on a company that can be listed in there, right? And ultimately, it's just making the path to purchase easier and more comfortable. So even if that company used to call and order by phone, well, if their team becomes comfortable enough to start placing those recurring orders online, then you've just freed up time for your internal team. Whoever was answering that phone can now go do something else with their time to help the business in a different way.
But on that note, I want to talk a little bit about change management and expectations. Yeah. Let's say I currently have a team that is only sales reps. There's no e-commerce orders. And because of that, I selected BigCommerce. I go live. What should my expectations be on how many customers should use the website?
I'm sorry.
I have my own thoughts here too, so it's a little bit of a trick question.
Yeah. Well, let's hear your thoughts on that. What do you think?
Okay, sure. I'll share my thoughts. Well, I not on the BigCommerce side because you do more of the BigCommerce. I've worked more on the the NetSuite e-commerce
Yeah.
side, the WooCommerce side, which is more B2B only. And a lot of times when people are getting their first e-commerce site and they're currently B2B, they just assume that their customers will start using it and it'll get immediate ROI. And it is possible, but it is unlikely that they'll get substantial use of it, is because they often miss one critical thing, which is learning how to do change management really well. And change management also involves change management on your sales reps' behavior as well as your customers, and trying to train behavior to be different. So the e-commerce going live is just one component. That is just the technical ability for you to be able to perform those actions. But then you have to change behavior on the second part of it. And I think that companies, I structured some of our managed service plans on the WooCommerce side specifically for this topic, because you have to change behaviors. And there's a couple of ways to change behaviors. It's creating more and more value for the e-commerce portal so that people want to use it. But in addition to that, you have to realign incentives for sales reps or create additional temporary incentives to help them get more of their accounts to use it, use the e-commerce, as well as align customer incentives for like promo codes and things like that. So I think that I've observed that people's expectations about turning on the lights, what that does, it still requires what I'd say is marketing and leadership to help have that change management on that sales team.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, and for the ROI to really make sense, right? You're going to need
have that piece.
You're going to need
you got to have that piece, or at least be thinking about it and set realistic expectations, and that you're going to have that real change management work. It'll be coordination with the sales team, the marketing team. And then I think that one of the key pieces, though, is also making sure that there's enough value and self-service functionality of the portal in the first place. And from what I've observed, BigCommerce has a lot of really good value out of the box for the customers to leverage so that they want to use it. It has like very real meaning. It's not just a direct-to-consumer transaction. It can actually work well and create value for them to want to go in and log in frequently, which is like a piece of the puzzle. But then educating them on what exists over and over again and incentivizing them is the other piece.
Caleb, on the point of change management, and from your experience, if we're talking ballpark numbers here or ballpark timelines, how much time do you think it would take for that change management, right? Taking orders that were previously done over the phone, through fax, whatever, moving that to an online platform like a BigCommerce website. How long do you think that would take for a company to go through that change management process to help their customers get comfortable with that?
So let's say we want to free up 20% of the sales rep's time. If you're B2B, it's going to be tough to have the guts to push more than that in the initial phase.
Yeah.
So I'd say that 20% within 6 to 12 months, but it can't be done just by turning on the lights and now I have an e-commerce. It requires consistent action post go live. It's possible to start that process on go live, but there's a lot of moving pieces happening already. It's hard to launch new technology and push customers to it. I like the idea of more of a soft launch, where
and
you get it's live, but then you gotta test it, make sure it's working for a handful of customers, and then rolling out incentives after that soft launch.
Yeah. And especially once that new software setup goes live, like you need to be training your internal teams on how to use it and how to promote it. And I think it's realistic to think, okay, the executive team or the directors and above, we're going to have a strategy, a go live strategy in place. But, I know when I've worked closely with sales reps in the past, they don't just want to be told what's going to happen. If I'm a sales rep, I want to be shown what has actually happened before I'm going to go stand in front of my valuable customers and tell them what new changes we have. And so, I guess what I'm saying is I agree with your timeline that 20% in that time frame sounds pretty realistic. And just knowing if you get better adoption than that, fantastic. But that's a good ballpark number. sounds like to go with. Now, one
Yeah.
other, I guess, thing I'll add in here is when I talk with people, they mention, we like doing the phone orders because it's a high value touch point between our team and our customers team. And Caleb, I liked what you point out. You and I were chatting about this earlier today, and you brought up a really cool example, or referenced a cool example of a way you can set up an e-commerce website in a way that it still shows that value of having that personal connection. I'm just wondering if you could maybe share with the folks listening a little bit about how they can set up their website to show that there's still personal touch involved.
Yeah, I commonly get on the B2B side of e-commerce that one of the most common objections from owners as they're trying to set up a new e-commerce site, or once I'm starting to advise them on how to get their customers to actually use it, the most common objection is, I don't want my customers to use it because we want to be able to create relationship and that opportunity. And well, first I would say that should have been an important thing for you to decide whether you're going to have an e-commerce site in the first place, because if you're not willing to push some existing customers there, it's going to take longer to get the ROI. But there are ways still, and I don't let it stay there where that's the thought that, hey, we don't want our existing customers to use the website. I think it's a little silly, and it's a fair point that you have relationship with your customers that you need to maintain and to create that personal touch. So one of the ideas I had, which I've seen on some sites that you can do on different e-commerce solutions, is you can tag on the customer account who the sales rep is. And that sales rep is has their email, their photo. You could have a personal Zoom link where you get admitted into the meeting room if someone joins it, that type of thing, their phone number, so that when I log in as this customer, I can log in and in the header see the photo of my account manager or sales rep, their email, their personal phone, and it gives that tailored experience to not lose touch of this relationship. So whenever there is some type of a phone call or support, it's always being routed to that exact same person every time, and they see their face pop up. So even though you may not be engaging verbally with that customer as much, they're at least seeing your face, that sales rep's face, to keep that bond and that relationship established.
Mm-hmm. And another
that's
way,
one way.
if we, and I love that idea, but a way that we can take this even further, right, is that we can build reporting on the back end to push to sales reps. So on a weekly basis or whatnot, they can just flip through a report and see the volume of their accounts on the website. So say, and that's just another way that they can then intentionally go out and have touch points with the companies that they need to, with the buyers that they need to. And so now there's still a touch point there, now in two ways, right? You get your picture, phone number, email address, all that stuff on the account like you're mentioning, but then that sales rep can really hone in and key in on the accounts that they need to grow or to maintain business. Maybe it's a new customer, right? In order to be able to really help continue to foster the relationship in the way that the sales rep feels it's most important. And I think that's just a way that can be very empowering for sales reps and sales leaders through having an e-commerce website.
Yeah, like let's say that on that same note for that reporting, I could pull what's the cart abandonment data for all my accounts that I'm tagged to. And then if it's still sitting in there after 2 weeks, after 1 week, it depends on how pushy you want to be, then just touch base. Hey, let me know if there's anything I can do, how to make it non-intrusive, but also get it prodded across the line. That's a way to keep that connection.
Yeah, and that could be very valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a way that you can start an e-commerce website if you're a B2B business and you want to maintain those relationships. That's just one example of many, many different ways that you can still maintain those relationships and still be able to increase sales through an e-commerce website, through a buyer portal.
Let's go through just a shotgun round of yes, no, because
Okay.
I don't know all these answers, and you could just say, yes, BigCommerce has that, yes, no questions. Or you could also say yes through through a BigCommerce app
Yeah.
if it's not like an app owned by BigCommerce. So BigCommerce, does it work for B2B,
Yes.
B2C,
Yes.
both on the same website?
Yes.
Can you pay invoices?
In B2B, yes.
Can you log in as a sales rep and place an order on the back end of BigCommerce? And can you log in on behalf of the front end on BigCommerce? Okay. Does it have a page builder tool?
Yes, BigCommerce has a native page builder tool. Although one caveat I will say is that there are apps you can get that add on functionality to the page builder tool. So you don't have to use the native, the one that's automatically in your BigCommerce account.
Can I use other page builder tools other than that what comes out of the box?
And what do you mean by that?
If I wanted a different drag and drop tool other than like a native drag and drop tool.
Yes.
Okay.
You have a
Tell
couple
me
of
more.
options
I'm curious.
there. What's that?
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so a real popular page builder tool within the BigCommerce ecosystem, and Shopify for a matter of fact, is Shogun. That's the name of the tool. And you can essentially, what it does is, native BigCommerce, you have a set of widgets you can use to drag and drop to build pages. Now what an app like Shogun does is it gives you many more widgets that you can drag and drop. And within Shogun, right, you can create templates and then just, copy and paste templates or whatnot into your website. But that's really what it's doing. When you pay for that product, it's building out the amount of widgets you can use to build your pages.
That makes sense. Let me think of some other questions here. Can you have customer-specific pricing?
Yes.
Can you set pricing on a customer group?
Yep, on a group of customers, yes.
Okay. Is there volume-based pricing?
Yes.
And then item-specific pricing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And one area that BigCommerce does stand out is in the world of headless commerce. And I know a lot of the questions that you're alluding to happen right within the BigCommerce environment, think the back end, right? Especially as we talk about pricing and customers and customer groups and whatnot. But where BigCommerce is standing out these days and where many feel they have the leading edge in the world of e-commerce is in headless commerce. And that really deals with the front end, like what we just were talking about, page builders. And that's a cool thing. Caleb, do you know much about headless commerce, or have you worked with headless commerce much?
I've heard the word.
Yeah, I heard the word. And that's common. It's kind of a buzzword right now. Headless commerce, the concept has been around for a while, but it's becoming more and more prevalent in the world of e-commerce just because of how affordable it's becoming. As technology advances, things become more affordable, and the same's holding true with headless commerce.
Okay, that's awesome. Good to know. And maybe we can do a bigger podcast episode just on headless for a little bit.
Yeah, I think
That'd be great.
I think it's definitely going to be worthwhile to have a longer conversation about headless. Maybe we can bring on somebody to talk more to it who's been in the environment a lot or has developed headless environments a lot, because
That'd be great.
it's a cool technology, or it's a cool way to set up a website.
We'll have to do that on one of our next ones. A couple other questions that I just know that I have people when I'm talking about other e-commerce solutions that we support. These are all the same common questions, and I'm just I'm like getting them all answered in one short sprint here. So let's see. I assume there's a contact us page and it submits and collects those. Is there ability to create quotes or estimates?
Yeah, so yes, creating quotes and estimates, that's where you would leverage apps within the BigCommerce ecosystem to add those features to your website.
Okay. Can you integrate BigCommerce to ERP systems?
Yes, there are many different options you have with integrations. Here at Anchor Group, we specialize in that and have helped walk BigCommerce customers through that, and we know it well. So we're always happy to chat with folks about that.
So we covered integrations through ERP and just like order management solutions, finance, that piece. What about integrating to email marketing solutions?
Yes, yes, the answer is yes. But BigCommerce has a lot of apps that you can, right? And essentially, you would get an app on the marketplace for many of those marketing features that you're talking about, whether it's SMS, text messaging or email marketing. And you would basically just integrate that into your BigCommerce account, and there are plugins and apps you can get for that.
Okay, sounds good. So if I were a direct-to-consumer business wanting to get BigCommerce, how is the pricing model structured? I know we talked about this a little bit where you said Shopify was like a per transaction fee because they're a payment processor.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pricing like? How is it? What's the difference? Is it per transaction?
Yeah, so BigCommerce pricing, you got a couple of different options, right? There are your standard set of pricing options where you can simply log on to the BigCommerce website and like purchase a BigCommerce license, log into your account, and you'll be able to, the pricing is very transparent there. For larger merchants who are going to do about, let's see here, about $500,000 or more in online revenue, BigCommerce pushes them to enterprise level pricing when you're around that price point, right? You get pushed to enterprise level pricing, and there you'll work with the BigCommerce account executive, and they will help figure out how much it would cost for you to have a BigCommerce website. And to your point, yeah, generally a portion of one of the variables they use to figure out that pricing is the quantity of transactions that are going to be going through your website.
Okay, so it's based on the quantity of transactions, not a percentage of the transaction amount.
That's correct.
Okay, so if that would make sense why BigCommerce favors people who are scaling, because then you're just paying per order created versus paying like a percentage of that order. Like
correct.
It's like
yeah, correct. On BigCommerce,
Yeah.
You're not paying a percentage of the transaction, like the monetary transaction.
got
Right?
it. So if I was a B2B business and my average order volume or my average order dollar amount was $1,000, maybe I sell some more expensive tools that are $500 a piece, then call it 3%, that cost for that one transaction is pretty hefty. Let's say Shopify is 3%. I don't know if it's 100% that, but my guess is it's in that ballpark. Versus on BigCommerce, it would be like a fixed dollar amount because it would be paying for the transaction.
Yeah, that's correct.
But if I had lots of small dollar transactions, I'm guessing the math also works out to where BigCommerce makes sense if like my average order value is $30. I guess it would be doing the math at that point to decide if the ROI is better with Shopify or with BigCommerce, if that percentage is a better deal versus the fixed dollar amount per transaction.
Yeah, and that's why it really does need to be looked at a case-by-case scenario. What the thought process you just went through is correct. And that's the way that you can get, once again, a ballpark understanding of where you might be. But even if somebody is considering either platform, I mean, it's worthwhile just reaching out to somebody to figure out, to get a better pulse for your situation, to figure out what it might actually look like.
Yeah. So really coming to the table with how much e-commerce dollars do I spend, but also how much and how much you pay today for that. And then also coming with the number of total transactions.
Yeah, correct.
Coming armed with that knowledge. Okay. Well, I think that we covered a lot today, and I appreciate you walking through it. I know that you are the main point of contact on our team to be able to talk through BigCommerce, so people can reach out directly to you, whether it be on LinkedIn, on our website, it gets routed to you, and you can walk them through that evaluation and if it makes sense for them. And, I assume that you'll pull in the right person from BigCommerce when that needs to happen too, but you'll scope out the implementation, any project support. And then whenever things come on more of the NetSuite side, it usually routes over to my team, and then we coordinate with each other from there. So people can reach out directly to you. Thanks for going through all that. And it sounds like we've already teed up another topic around headless commerce next.
That's right.
And to end this, I just figured let's go through just a few more of these comment sections just to end this, because there were a handful of other ones, but it was going a little bit long, so I didn't want to go too long into it, but let's just list off a few more of these comments that I thought were kind of funny overall, just to wrap this up. So somebody said, Michael said, I once set Netflix on a cold call. Common one, right?
Yeah.
But can you imagine getting a cold call and just wondering, I didn't know Netflix
I didn't know
really
Netflix was
increased their
cold
rates.
calling. Yeah.
They must be really desperate.
Yeah.
And then Sunil says, back in the day when cold calling on NetSuite, the other person would say next week.
Yeah.
I'd get confused.
That's funny.
I guess I said the funny ones earlier today, but that's okay. Well, thanks, Michael. Appreciate the time, and we'll talk through headless commerce soon. Thanks, everybody.